We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. This week's episode is sponsored by CityVest. CityVest has quickly become the most popular and best way for doctors to invest in top-performing real estate private equity funds that are usually reserved for institutional investors. This unique access to investing in these institutional funds is available for the first time ever through CityVest's easy and secure online investment platform. CityVest does the hard work of conducting due diligence and vetting the investments. They even get a third-party due diligence report that is posted on their website. As a result of aggregating a several million-dollar investment amount into their access funds, CityVest gains access to investing in the institutional investment and is able to negotiate better investment terms such as a 12% preferred return. You can check them out at cityvest.com or go to the link in the show notes below. Welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, we talk about 4 pillars of freedom: time, financial, location, emotional freedom. And it's the last pillar that I really want to emphasize in today's episode, the emotional freedom. So emotional freedom is happiness. It can come from quality of life, your relationships with your family, spouse, significant other, or it can also be doing what you love, especially with regards to creativity. So in that light, we have an actor, an entertainer, and a celebrity joining us today. His name is Randall Franks, and he's an American film and TV actor. He's a Hall of Fame entertainer, and he's an award-winning author and journalist. So he's appeared from TV's In the Heat of the Night, and today we're going to talk all about creativity and exploring your passion. So Randall, welcome.
Chris, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to speak to your viewers, and I'm glad to be with you today.
Yeah, and it's really great because we've met through Podmatch, and it's really rare that I get the opportunity to interview celebrities and people very accomplished in their field. So, we're going to talk all about creativity and pursuing your passions. And you took a really interesting approach, which was acting. So, tell us in music. So tell us more about, where your background and how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Of course, Chris, I was very blessed starting out at a young age. I started playing the violin at 8 years old, and I could have never imagined what doors that would open for me in life. But just within a span of a few short years, by the time I was 13, I was traveling the country with my own band and had reached a couple of years after that as a regular guest star on the Grand Ole Opry. So those opportunities for me introduced me to so many wonderful mentors, both in music and in real life, who guided me through that process of becoming a music personality. The blessings of getting recognized by those that care about what we do as an audience, as folks who listen to us on radio, allowed me to then grow into opportunities in television, performing in variety shows, and eventually landing on the TV series In the Heat of the Night on NBC is where we started. We eventually moved to CBS, but working with TV legends like Carol O'Connor, who, I grew up watching All in the Family. We all who of that era knew Archie Bunker. And I remember the first time I saw Carol O'Connor walk on the set, I was looking and I was just in amazement. I said, wow, that's Archie Bunker. And but I came to know Carol O'Connor as a man and as a mentor. And, we called him Pops on the show, and he was that. For me, he was a father figure, and he invested in me as a human being and as an actor entertainer, and gave me so much that I still carry with me today, now, so many years later.
Yeah, that's so interesting because actually, I remember when you're referring to these shows. I was actually probably in my 5 or 6 years old, and I remember watching these shows. And what's interesting is how did you at the early age get the courage to decide you're gonna become a musician and actually make a career out of it? Because kind of that's the journey is quite unstable, it's unpredictable, but the potential rewards are humongous.
Well, when I was as a child, I was let's say a very sickly child. I spent a lot of my time. I couldn't go out and do a lot of sports and things that a lot of young people do. So music became my respite. It allowed me to focus on something that I could do, restricted to my ailments. But as my health improved, eh, also did my opportunities to go out and find a use for that respite. And one of those things, when I was growing up, a couple of my favorite TV shows was the Andy Griffith Show and the Beverly Hillbillies. And on the Andy Griffith Show, there was a group called the Darlings who came on and played music. And that was the real group, the Dillards. And then on the Beverly Hillbillies, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs would come on that show and they play music with the Clampetts. And those two groups of entertainers inspired me. And I told my parents that I want to do what they do. So my inspiration as a child is I wanted to be like someone I saw on television, which many of us do. We emulate what we see. But that desire then brought me to bring together young people in my schools around me in school and create a band of other like-minded young people who were playing Appalachian instruments because that's the region that I'm from. And we started touring, and then the doors just began to open up for us. I think there was providence involved in that, but which eventually, as I said, led us to the Grand Ole Opry. But in performing for them, and thankfully they still bring me around from time to time to perform for them all these many years later. The opportunity, though, of how I focused in on that, the music was the opening. God blessed me with having the gift of at least learning how to play. Now, I'm not a prodigy. I don't consider myself to be exceptionally talented as a musician, but he gave me just enough that was a vocation that I could pursue. And it was a wonderful outlet for me as a child. And even today, as an adult, I can pick up my instrument and whatever worries come my way, they'll just evaporate. And the day becomes anew with that music that he's put into my soul, and it allows me to push it out. And there's nothing more gratifying than having somebody come up to you, whether it's on the street or they drop you an email or whatever, and say, I just loved your performance of a particular song, or I loved hearing you play at this event. And that's, for me, that's what all of this has been about. My entire life has been about trying to uplift others with the gifts that God shared with me.
Interesting. That's a very interesting. We'll get into, making a difference in your hometown and inspiring others through, words, music, and acting, and, giving back. One thing that you mentioned is, you went from Appalachian bluegrass boy to a, Hollywood star. And then you talk about encouragers guide our steps, and you actually wrote a book about it. What inspired you to write it, and tell us more about that?
Well, as a matter of fact, Chris, I wrote 3 books. There was so much material from throughout my career. I did three different projects. This was the first one. Encouragers 1, Finding the Light. Then Encouragers 2, Walking with the Masters. And then finally Encouragers 3, A Guiding Hand. And in each of these books, I've taken stories about my experience with everyday people, with musicians and entertainers that many of us would know, whether they were actors or singers or musicians, and the time or energy that they took out of their lives and placed in me. Those encouragers along the way are the ones that open the doors. They're the ones that mentioned my name to someone else. They're the ones who, on a bad day backstage, put their arm around me and said, things are going to get a little better. You just hang in there. Those stories are featured in here, and I've got, from In the Heat of the Night, I've got stories of Carol O'Connor. I've got stories of my other co-stars like Alan Autry and David Hart. There's stories of people like even the generation prior to me who took an interest in my career, folks like Roy Rogers. There's the great entertainers from country music like Roy Acuff and Ernest Tubb. There's Jim and Jesse of the Grand Ole Opry, and Bill Monroe. As you can see behind me on my wall, was one of my greatest mentors as a child. And he brought me to the Grand Ole Opry, and he took me under his wing and taught me even intricacies of playing particular tunes on the fiddle, and then supported me from a mentor standpoint for many years. So in the Encourager series, that's what I focused on, is these stories. There are hundreds of photos from throughout my career in the books. And there are also, for those of you who are cooks, there are recipes for many of the people that I talk about in the books. In each volume, there's 30 or 40 recipes of the different people that are featured. But I think the greatest message from the books, Chris, is, and I hope people take this away, each of us every day are given the opportunity to be an encourager to someone. That is the key to why we're here. We're here to make a difference in other people's lives, and people are sent into our lives each and every day that we may not at that particular moment realize that they were sent there for us to make a difference in their life. But if we take the time, pay attention, and even just give a uplifting word, that will change their life. And we'll never realize sometimes how many people we've impacted as an encourager.
Yeah, I like that. The other thing is, you mentioned a couple of your mentors, especially Carol O'Connor. What was it like to work with him, and some of the lessons learned from him?
Carol, as I mentioned, we called him Pops, and for me, like I said, he was a father figure. I had lost my father a year before I started on In the Heat of the Night, so he really took me under his wing and gave me a lot of advice about um, Hollywood, the acting world, taught me how to write screenplays, which was a very vital thing that I've been doing ever since. But it was a great joy to learn from someone who had been in the industry with such wonderful roles, and learning all the aspects and watching him do every aspect of a production. He was our executive producer, so he focused on writing scripts and directing and acting, and he shared that too with me. And so he was wonderful to work with. Now, I will say, as a boss, sometimes he can be a tough boss, but that's true of all of us that have been blessed to supervise other people. But every lesson learned from Carol has been a golden nugget that has paid many dividends over these past 3 decades since we worked together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And then how did you, so you mentioned a lot of these mentors, and then your musical skill and ability, and how did you wind up as a Hollywood actor? What made you go that direction?
Well, as I mentioned, in the music industry, oftentimes you get audience recognition, and your career starts to elevate, and then you get to cross over and make appearances on television variety shows, and my career allowed me to do that. There was a certain point, as I mentioned, I'd put together a young group of performers, and we all grew up together. Over a course of about 7 or 8 years, I had 25 different youth musicians that played with my band. And as everybody hit college age, um, decided to go different directions, I sort of thought, you know, I've done the band thing for many years. Now I want to focus on me as a solo artist, but I've always wanted to act because I had not reached that goal. You remember the goal we talked about of watching Flatt and Scruggs and the Darlings on television, and I'm saying as a child, that's what I want to do. I'd not reached that goal yet. So I wanted to figure out how to get there. So I began taking classes in acting as well as trying to work opportunities through, excuse me, through the doors that had opened for me as a country music entertainer. Uh, and they started looking at me because I already had an audience. So casting directors were aware of the audience that came with me. And so the opportunities began to open. My first role was in a CBS movie called Desperate for Love with Kristen Slater and Brian Bloom, Veronica Cartwright. And it was simply as a high school singer. And the movie was centered around a high school choir. So everybody who participated sang in the choir pretty much. And I was one of those. And so that sort of got my foot wet, sort of sticking my toe in the water. And the process began from there. And within a short period of time, I had done a couple of different projects like that one. And I received a call one day, and a casting director said, they've moved in the heat of the night to Georgia, which is where I was living at the time. And they don't have anything for you to do, but I want you to go down to the set. The first day, I'm going to send you as an extra. Go be an extra on the show. So I did. And I went the first day, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm standing outside the wardrobe trailer. A man walks by me, looks me up and down and says, you look an awful lot like a police officer. I said, thank you. He went on his way. I had no idea who he was, but so I'm standing there waiting for them to look me over and say what I'm wearing is going to work for the day shooting. Eventually, I went on my way. That particular day, everybody in the cast of the police department was working. You know, we had Carol O'Connor there. We had Howard Rollins. We had Alan Autry, David Hart, Jeffrey Thorne, and Hugh O'Connor. Everybody was working in the scene. So over the course of the day, I had the opportunity working as an extra to meet all of these stars, and was even placed in what's called a silent bit with Carol O'Connor. So that's an opportunity to be one-on-one with the actor. And so that's when I formally met Mr. O'Connor. And, he broke the ice because you're told as an extra, you don't talk to the principals unless you're spoken to. So you respect that. So he opened up the dialogue and started talking to me. And over the course of the next several weeks, they kept bringing me back to the set of In the Heat of the Night as an extra. They kept placing me in different scenes with the different actors. And in a few weeks, they came to me and said, we're creating another police character for the show. We want you to be it. So from my perspective, I was very naive, but they had been giving me an on-set audition, watching how I interacted on the set, seeing how I looked with the other actors on the show, and then created something for me that lasted for 5 more years, and thankfully blessed me to be on both CBS and NBC as a network television star. So it's one of those, I guess, Cinderella stories in a way, because that doesn't happen to everybody. But the Lord blessed me with that opportunity.
Yeah. Sounds like one of those providence moments that you described earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so. He put me there and put people in my life that would open those doors, because I could have just as easily just been there and been an extra and, got my $40 a day and went on my way, and that would have been it, but instead something else was in store, and there was a reason why I was there. And I think that reason even continues emanating today as people still watch the show. Millions watch our show every day in reruns, and we still have those people who reach out and tell me how that watching that show changed their life, or how much that show meant to their father or their grandfather, grandmother. It touched so many lives, the millions of people, as it went around the world, and it ran in 150 countries around the world. It's translated in many different languages, and I was blessed to be a small part of that and be a seed within that environment to share my knowledge and what God gave me to share with Carol O'Connor and the other people to put out there and emanate on the airwaves.
Yeah, and it's so inspiring to look at your career, and I always like talking to the generation before me, because you can get a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom, such as you've given. So it's so. I know a lot of people will be inspired by your story and want to check out your work. I know you're on YouTube and Twitter as well. So tell people how they can find you, look you up, and and learn more about you.
Well, they can visit me at randallfranks.com, which is my website. If they're interested specifically in the books or some of my music products, they can go to randallfranks.com/store. Of course, as you mentioned, at Randall Franks on Twitter, Randall Franks TV on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook at Randall Franks, actor, director, entertainer, as well as most of the social media platforms. There's a Randall Franks page. If you just look for it, you can find it. And I'd love to have you become part of our group that follow what I do. My most recent movie that has been made available is The Cricket's Dance, which is a wonderful story set present day and in the 1800s. I think you'll enjoy it if you search it out on the streaming services and check that one out. It's always a blessing to get to do new movies. There's more in store. I've got a new project that's coming up that I'm excited about. I can't share much about it as of yet, but watch out for it on our website. And Chris, it's always a pleasure to get to meet new folks. It's been my pleasure to be with you today, and I hope that your viewers do check me out, come out and become part of those that follow what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the audience, and for all the listeners, the Randall's links and resources will be in the show notes. So I always enjoy talking to people outside my field and just gaining insights and wisdom and putting the pieces together. So thanks so much. And we look forward to all your future success and all of your future projects.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure. And once again, hopefully we'll cross paths again soon, folks. We'll see you next time. Come by and see me at randallfranks.com.
I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while, you know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislewmdphd.com for more support. I'll see you next week.